Hello everyone, I'm Lisa. This is my partner, Wei. Hi Wei.
Hi Lisa. Hi everyone.
We hope you have a nice day. Today we will have a brief talk about the deployment of NebulaGraph. As many people know, NebulaGraph have a variety of deployment methods, and today we will have an overall introduction to them. Hope the video can help you find the most proper method. Then let's go straight to a point. Hi Wei, can you have a brief introduction to the deployment methods?
Sure, Lisa. Okay, we will start. So we will start with this decision tree. Um, Before them, I will dive into the results on how many options we already have on the Nebula community that you can use to deploy a Nebula cluster. So all those green circles are actually our options. Like in Docker, you can use Docker Compose or Docker Swarm. In Kubernetes, you can use the Nebula Helm, which is a Helm chart for Nebula. And we also have Nebula operators, which is a Kubernetes operators to spawn you a Nebula cluster. You can build from the source code, of course, and after all, the Debian and RPM binary packages are provided by Nebula community, and there is a Nebula Ansible project to help you use the Ansible to spawn Nebula clusters. So how do we choose the, so many options of them? So we can refer to this decision tree, like if you are running them containerized or not, running on Kubernetes or not, you want to use the CRD or operator pattern or not, like you prefer to use the binary package, is this running on the Intel architecture or not, or you're random on ARM64 or MIPS machines. So basically, for example, if your answer is I would like to use Kubernetes as the infrastructure and I prefer to use CRD, then you will go for Nebula operators. If you prefer use the Helm chart, then you can go for the Helm chart, but it's actually not recommended because the Helm chart is not good enough for maintaining the stateful workloads on Kubernetes. And you would like to running on a container, but not on Kubernetes, you can still use Docker. And if you're only running them on a single server, you can use the Docker Compose. It's a best fit for your single machine containerized way. And it's also the best fit if you want to try it for your first time and you already have a Linux machine. Uh, yeah, Nebula Docker Swarm is a project you can run your containerized way other than Kubernetes on multiple machines, but it's actually not recommended. But still, we have this option. And if you're running your workload on your ARM-based machine and not on your container in a containerized way, you can build it from the source code. So basically, that's all of the options, and with all these questions to be answered on this decision tree. And I think that is all from my side. Yeah.
Okay. It's quite clear for me, even though I'm a beginner too. Uh, so about this, I have a question. All of these methods have the same hardware specification requirements when deploying the Nebula Graph, right?
Yes, it's a good question because actually there's not too much of the fingerprints on different types of workloads. So basically, your hardware requirements only is only related to your purposes or your business logic or your data volumes. But one thing to mention is that actually, for example, in Nebula operators, there are some control plane workloads introduced. That's not too much, but it will consume you some extra resources. That's one thing. Another thing is that if you are running only for your test purposes on your small data volume, you can even bootstream them on your laptop that is like 4 CPU cores or even vCPUs and like 8 or 4 gigabyte RAMs. But when it comes to the production level runtime, you better you better use the faster storage like SSD or NVMe SSD for your volume. Yeah.
Okay, got it. So you mean only SSD is supported?
A good question, Lisa. The answer is yes and no. Yes, because in your production scenarios, it's highly recommended to use the SSD or even NVMe SSD. But if you only want to test it to try some basic queries, to play with NebulaGraph, you can run it on your very weak machines like your laptop or even very old servers on your lab that is only provide the HDD disk. You can boot up the Nebula and you can run the queries, but please expect some unexpected behaviors. But please note that the Nebula community has started some work on making the HDD behaviors more stable, but it's never recommended to use HDD. Yeah.
Okay, understand. So I also have another question. What operating system do we support now? And how about running NebulaGraph on Windows or Mac OS?
Good question, Lisa. Technically, so NebulaGraph was only implemented based on assumption of the operating system of Linux on various of distros. But ideally, if you want to run Nebula on your, on your laptop, which is running on Linux, Windows, or even Mac OS, so it can be done with the help of the visualization toolings like your Docker desktop or hypervisors of VirtualBox or VMware Player. That's still possible. One thing to mention is that it's a good news that last month in our daily build in our master, which is after the 2.6.1, after that, we have a nightly build for the ARM-based Linux image. So in fact, now I can run Nebula on top of on my M1 MacBook on top of the container on top of the Docker desktop with the ARM-based Docker image. Yeah.
Okay, quite clear for me. And as I know, many users want to use the NebulaGraph in the production environment, and many people often ask me about the deployment of the three workloads like GraphD, MetaD, StorageD in the production environment. So about them, is there anything special to attention to?
Actually, if you're familiar with the architecture of NebulaGraph, you will know the answer correctly. That you will know the answer that for GraphD it's stateless, so you can have any of them. And for StorageD, which is the storage backend instance, at least you will have three of them if your deployment in a distributed way. But you can scale out to any scale of instances of StorageD. And for MetaD, it's recommended to have three of them. Yeah, Lisa.
Okay, I know. Uh, so I also have the last question. I must be a talented after. So when deploying a NebulaGraph in a production environment, is it better to deploy Kubernetes or on the local server? How do they differ?
A good question, Lisa. There is, I think the answer is this, it depends. The general argument between the containerized or not, or even Kubernetes or not, applies to Nebula here. I'm not going to talk about that, but it generally depends on your infra or ops teams. For example, if your ops team prefers Kubernetes and like all of your observation infra or logging, tracking, monitoring infra are Kubernetes based, then it's better for you to run them on Kubernetes like you are using Nebula operators. But for example, if in your infra of Kubernetes, the persistent volume class, the PVC provided is not fast enough. Like you only have a slow NAS or HDD based backend storage. In that case, you will have to run Nebula in a non-Kubernetes way, because in that case you can leverage your fast disks on your bare metal operating systems. But it basically depends on your situation. And there's no big differences, and basically they are the very same core binary in both the container images and your binary packages or the source code that you will like to build. One thing I would like to highlight here is that our Nebula operators is actually rapidly evolved these days. Like last month, we just released the support on the rolling upgrade. And for example, other features like auto scaling is still not yet implemented. So it's more than welcome that you guys to keep an eye on our Nebula operators repository in GitHub and try all the new features and feedback to us. This will be a huge contribution to the community. And that's it, Lisa.
Okay. Quite amazing explanation. So about today's discussion, it will be over now, and we hope you can have some understanding of all the NebulaGraph deployment options, so you can choose the right method that suits you.